Welcome to Trinidad and Tobago Opposition's media briefing this Sunday, the 18th of August, 2024, discussing critical national issues. Today, we have presenting MP Dr. Roodal Moonilal, Shadow for National Security, Housing, Works and Transport, and also MP Khadijah Ameen, Shadow for Local Government. Thank you for joining. We will begin our broadcast shortly. In the meanwhile, please share the live.
Everybody now, let's go. Come on, come on. Hey. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, yeah, yeah. It's time to make a difference. It's time to turn that page. We got to do the right things if we want brighter days. Cause things ain't getting easy and the road ahead is tough. It's up to you and I to make the madness stop. Every day the things getting harder, and every day the things getting rough, and every day they hike the food prices and they implementing more tax. For the sake of our twin nation and the youth of the next generation, let's stand united, show we not divided. Let's show them now and send them a message now.
Show them that we're the voice of hope.
Send them a message now.
Show them that our country ain't no joke.
Send them a message now.
Show them that we're the ones who care.
Send them a message now.
Oh, 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 yeah, yeah. From a distance, look at the picture. Tell me what you see. An abstract of destruction to destroy you and me. We got to do the right thing. We got to make that move. Cause if we don't act fast on this, we're the ones who lose.
Every day the things getting harder, and every day the things getting rough, and every day they hike the food prices and they implementing more tax. For the sake of our twin nation and the youth of the next generation, let's stand united, show we not divided. Let's show them now and send them a message now.
Show them that we are the voice of hope.
Send them a message now.
Show them that our country ain't no joke.
Send them a message now.
Show them that we are the ones who care.
Send them a message now.
Oh, 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 yeah, yeah.
We stand united in the belief that if you empower community, the community empowers the country.
We are the party that gave every child a secondary school education since 2001.
By building more schools in 11 years than others did in 40. We believe that no child,
Rich or poor, should be left behind.
which is why we give every Form 1 student a laptop to expand their minds and their dreams.
We are the party that put police cars back on the streets.
And gave the police a $1,000 bonus because we believe that we should support the persons who are protecting you.
We are the party that reduced the murder rate to its lowest in 14 years. We expanded GATE, stopped the property tax, and increased maternity leave.
We are the party that invested in you and in your community. by investing in schools, community centers, lighted parks, 24-hour health centers, and the most extensive road repair program in decades.
We believe that education is always the solution and that no one should have to pick between sending their child to school or buying food.
We are the party that works for you. We are the first responders in every situation, working to deliver a better standard of living for you and your family.
And most importantly, we have confidence in you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. This is not a campaign, it's a movement based on building communities and strengthening families.
Come out and join us, and together we will get the nation working and moving again. Our children will once again have access to gate and technology.
We will improve healthcare.
By cutting the time it takes to see a doctor in an emergency, we will establish a senior citizen unit in every major hospital and staff the hospital with the doctors and nurses you need to create a first-class healthcare system. We will focus on creating high-paying jobs, fixing our laws to remove red tape, and ensuring that you and your family are safer. We will reduce corporate taxes to jumpstart the economy, create a special investment zone along the East-West corridor, and work with entrepreneurs to build a digital economy. This is an investment in your community to move the nation forward and get TNT working again.
Whether you are from 4th Street in Barataria to Railway Road in Dow Village, from Green Street in Tunapuna to Clark Road in Debe, from La Hoqueta to Moruga, from Mayaro to Scarborough, we are one people with the same dreams of a better tomorrow. And when we stand together, we win together. We are UNC and proud.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the press. Good morning, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, well-wishers, supporters, activists of the United National Congress in Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean and the wider world. We welcome you to our party headquarters in Chaguanas, Trinidad, for our usual Sunday morning media conference, aired live on several social media platforms. This morning is a pleasure to have you, members of the press and others, with us to discuss very critical matters of current affairs, economy, politics in Trinidad and Tobago, and some of the burning problems affecting citizens at this very difficult time in our nation's history. I want to welcome you again on behalf of the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, opposition leader and political leader of the United National Congress. Welcome to this event. This morning, I'm joined by a very dynamic, hardworking Member of Parliament for St. Augustine, former chairman of the Tunapuna-Piako Regional Corporation, former senator, firebrand activist and politician, who will speak on issues of local government, issues affecting people, food prices, and other very critical matters. Please welcome the Honorable Khadijah Ameen.
Thank you very much, and good morning to our listeners, our viewers. On behalf of the United National Congress, we thank you for being with us this morning. As the UNC continues our pre-budget consultations throughout the country, I want to take a moment to thank those from every constituency who have participated. The UNC pre-budget consultation is a concept of the political leader of the UNC, the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and it gives a voice to citizens all over the country to speak out about issues that are affecting them and to make recommendations that will form part of the opposition's brief as we respond to the budget in Parliament. And this gives our citizens the opportunity to have a direct say in Parliament, which is what Parliament should be. As true representatives, we in the United National Congress will continue to be your voice. It is very clear from these consultations that across the country, people are grappling with rising food prices, with continuous flooding, with the increasing cost of education, and a breakdown in local government services, in addition to one of the most pressing issues, which is crime and lawlessness that continues under this incompetent PNM government. The issues are not isolated to single incidents. This did not happen overnight. This happened because of a direct systematic mismanagement by the government, by a lack of foresight, total incompetence, and a failure to prioritize the people of this country. Today, we are here to lay bare the facts as we reveal some of the extent to which this government has failed to uphold its responsibility. This morning, I will share with you how the mismanagement of foreign exchange has led to unprecedented food prices, inflation, driving many families to the brink of food insecurity. I will also share with you the situation of continuous flooding and how that has devastated and continues to devastate local agriculture, leading to shortages in food supply, but also skyrocketing food prices for basic items, while the PNM puts on $1 million Agri-Expo as a puppy show. I will highlight to you as well the burden being faced by parents as they prepare for back to school and the costs that are forcing them to make almost impossible choices between their children's education and basic necessities at a time when Trinidad and Tobago is recording its highest ever number of cases of school dropouts. I also want to share with you a very disturbing situation that is developing at regional corporations that could cause hundreds of corporation workers to lose their jobs. And finally, I want to expose once again the underfunding, mismanagement of the public health department responsible for insect vector control, the dengue situation, and the total incompetence and uncaringness of Minister of Health, Terence Dialsing. Each of these issues, my friends, are a symbol of a bigger issue in our country. The disease of the erosion of good governance and demonstration of total incompetence of this PNM government, an administration that has really failed in its leadership and its stewardship, and has failed to navigate the challenging times that we as a nation face, and the people are bearing the consequences. We are not here today to just highlight problems. We in the opposition have always demanded accountability, and we call for immediate action to address these shortcomings. But more than that, we have been putting forward solutions, offering policies by way of our anti-crime measures, our economic recovery plan, and other measures that would make Trinidad and Tobago a better place. So let me start, my friends, by dealing with the issue of high food prices and the foreign exchange crisis that this government has created. Under this government's leadership, we have seen a truly alarming rise in the cost of basic food items. There was an article in the Guardian, Trinidad Guardian, on August 30th that quoted the average price of food and non-alcoholic beverages rose by 8.6% between July 2022 and July 2023, in 1 year. This is not the UNC statistics. This is the Retail Price Index compiled by the Central Statistical Office, the CSO. These are facts that the government cannot deny. There was another Guardian article from March 19th, where the CSO stated that inflation rate and food prices have increased. These are not the words of the UNC. These are the facts. This is data. And what is the root cause? A major issue is a severe foreign exchange shortage that has driven up the price on the black market for foreign exchange, which of course creates a domino effect because the prices at the grocery stores have now skyrocketed because importers and producers are struggling to secure the necessary foreign exchange to purchase food and raw material. So when the government continues to deny this, they tell us that their heads are either buried in the sand or they are trying to fool the population. Even the IMF has acknowledged this issue to the point where I think it was the Trinidad Express reported, and their headline was, IMF urges swift action to resolve forex shortages. Is the Express lying? The UNC will continue to expose the truth. The International Monetary Fund has in fact issued a call to action regarding Trinidad and Tobago's ongoing foreign exchange challenges. And it has emphasized that resolving these shortages must be a top priority for this country. This is the IMF telling us that the government is incompetent in tackling the issue of foreign exchange. And the IMF's executive directors were also calling for improvement in the way foreign currency is distributed and exchanged in the market. This is something that the UNC has continued to highlight and demand that the government pay attention to. And in fact, a governor of the central bank lost his job because he held the government accountable and exposed the unfair system of distribution of foreign exchange to friends and family and financiers. My friends, small agricultural processors who are part of the backbone of our local food supply are also being squeezed out. They cannot compete in this hostile environment where big businesses are being given foreign exchange and they are being denied. Without foreign exchange, they are not able to purchase the raw materials they need to produce food locally. And this failure is entirely due to the government's mishandling of the foreign exchange situation. And what does the government do? They continue to mamagai the population, squandering millions on an agri-expo, trying to mask the failing agriculture sector. But I will tell you that farmers and citizens continue to suffer. In today's newspaper, The Guardian, the Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopi-Schoon, is saying that the country could see a drop in food prices. Paula Gopi-Schoon. And she is indicating that she has been looking at the poundage, the volume of food being imported, and it has gone down. She has also acknowledged that some of the prices have gone up, but she is looking at the volume. I wonder if it didn't occur to Minister Paula Gopi-Schoon that the volume of food being imported is lower because importers are not getting the foreign exchange that they need, or that people are buying less because they have less money to purchase. Think about it and get back to us, please, Paula, darling. I also want to reiterate that floods destroying crops and livestock on an almost weekly basis, including poultry, has been driving the prices up. Just this week, the price of ginger reached to $80 per pound. That is a clear indication of the supply and shortages we are facing. So let us take a moment to compare the essential food prices from 2015 to today. And I tell you, my friends, the difference is really, really staggering. Under the previous administration, led by the Honorable Kamla Persad-Bissessar, food prices were far, far less than they are today. And you know what? Unfortunately, it is the citizens who are bearing the brunt of this incompetence. As food prices rise, what happens is that families are now forced to stretch their budgets thinner and thinner, and they are struggling to put nutritious meals on the table. This affects the growth and development of our children and their ability to excel in schools. In fact, some of them drop out of school because their families need them to help supplement the income of the household, as food prices and the cost of living generally increases. So this morning, we are demanding that the government take immediate action to stabilize the foreign exchange situation and to prioritize forex allocation to essential sectors like agriculture and food production. And please, don't let that be influenced by who are your friends and your financiers. I mentioned how flooding is affecting agriculture and driving up food prices. And I want to remind you that in May of 2020, the Minister of Works, the Honorable Rohan Sinanan, made a very bold statement. He said, in 5 years, flooding will be eradicated for good. That sounded amazing. We were all looking forward to it. But 2 days ago, with a little drizzle, Port of Spain flood and everything shuts down. When we look at recent newspaper headlines, these are things happening all around us. Trinidad Express, July. Flood havoc across Trinidad. Trinidad Guardian. Rain leads to traffic pileup, flash flooding in North Trinidad. Loop TT, June 2024. Flash floods reported across Trinidad. Ongoing flood crisis. So my friends, there is an ongoing flood crisis, and this is another glaring example of this administration's failure. So while Rohan Sinanan has been promising that flooding will be eradicated in 5 years, he promised that 10 years ago, and to date, our local food production and productivity in our nation as a whole has been severely impacted. Up to this last week, the constituents of St. Augustine were tremendously affected by flash flooding. Streets that never experienced flooding because of the neglect of the Blackman Ravine, most of Curep were affected. You had this bamboo area also being affected, and a lot of work contracts awarded in those areas that the residents are questioning where the money gone, when will the work be completed. You have in the St. Augustine South area a bridge that is called Dry River Bridge that has been problematic for many years. It is collapsing, and every time it rains, it overflows, and residents in that area are continuously affected. So while as a member of parliament, I will take the opportunity to visit with the councillors and submit information to our disaster management units, that is not good enough. We demand that those water courses be addressed, that the bridges be fixed, that the water courses be dredged, that the floodgates are repaired and functional, and that the pumps are working in addition to ensuring that the banks of those water courses are strengthened, not only in St. Augustine constituency, but throughout the country. Rohan Sinanan, you promised to stop flooding in 5 years. Let us see you do something, please. Today, we are literally paying the price. When residents are affected by flooding, they lose furniture, appliances, household items. And that, of course, is a financial cost. When we have farmers affected by flooding, what happens is that they lose their crops. All the money that they invested in chemical, labor, plants, time, all this goes down the drain literally. In addition, food prices go up and consumers are all affected. So this government is costing citizens money because of their incompetence. And as we move away from the high food prices, I want to take a moment as a parent myself to give a thought to our nation's children who are preparing for school. The reopening of school is in September, and as we approach a new school year, parents across the country, in addition to facing high food prices, are facing yet another burden, and that is the increasing cost for back-to-school supplies and books. Education is said to be a fundamental right. Yet, under this government, the schools are there. We will deal with the schools and the conditions of the schools on another occasion. But it is becoming increasingly difficult for families to really afford the basic necessities for their children's education. School books and supplies are not luxuries. These are essential tools for learning. The rising cost of are really forcing the parents to make difficult choices, and it is often at the expense of their children's education. We are urging the government to intervene and to provide support to families through subsidies, grants, and by addressing the underlying issues driving up these costs. One of Dr. Keith Rowley's election promise back in 2020 was the PNM plans to eliminate school books by 2022. It's 2024 and we are still waiting, another broken promise. So just before the elections, the Prime Minister said that should the PNM be re-elected, they were aiming to have e-books implemented in all schools by 2022. What happened to that, Keith? What happened to that, Dr. Rowley? What happened to that, Mr. Prime Minister? Where our children would no longer be carrying 40-pound bags. I want to quote the Prime Minister, I want to quote him. He said, and I quote, where our children would no longer be carrying 40 pounds of books on their backs, but we will have electronic blackboards and writing boards in the schools, and the children will have e-books. These are the words of Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, Prime Minister in 2020. And as usual, it turned out to be the typical PNM lie. Another broken promise coming from the same man who took away laptops from our children, now promising e-books. Are you going to believe him? This is a man who shut down one of the best education initiatives in our nation's history because it was initiated by Kamla Persad-Bissessar out of pure spite and malice. The political leader of the UNC has indicated publicly that the UNC will bring back laptops for all secondary school children and introduce tablets in primary schools. And perhaps by then it will be practical to have e-books, because it's not practical to have e-books when our children don't have devices. My friends, I want to now move to a very disturbing development that is happening where regional corporations are concerned. We have received some very disturbing reports that regional corporations have been instructed to cease hiring and could be forced to terminate employees. This is happening because the allocations for wages and COLA was not sufficient in the budget. Regional corporations have a fixed number of permanent, casual, and regular workers. So it is very easy to determine the cost per year to pay wages and COLA. The allocation was far short of what would be needed in the budget. The opposition raised this issue, and the Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, Faris Alwari, as well as the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Colm Imbert, indicated that it will get a supplementation in the midterm. We say, okay. The midterm came around, the midterm review, and they did put in a little bit of money, but not enough to cover the workers' salaries till the end of the year. This, again, is another clear indication of the government's disregard for the welfare of our local government representatives, and in fact, for the employment of hundreds or perhaps thousands of workers at regional corporations. Our regional corporations, and before I go into how it's affecting the corporations, I want to share some figures with you. When the government fails to give the full allocation for wages and COLA to the regional corporation, our regional corporations, led by UNC mayors and chairmen, have been instructed to not fire any workers. Do not put workers on the breadline. The UNC will not put workers on the breadline. We will save jobs. And to do that, regional corporations led by the UNC have been embarking on a series of virements of funds. That is, moving funds allocated for one thing towards paying wages and COLA so that workers will not lose their jobs. Regional corporations have been forced to take monies away from maintaining cemeteries, from other contracted services in public health, which includes scavenging and garbage collection, at a time when the minister is calling for cleanup while we are facing a dengue crisis. There are a number of public health expenditures under contracted services that the corporation now is saying we cannot do it because we have to put this money towards keeping our workers so they will not lose their jobs. Maintenance of state traces and local roads. Again, who fixes your potholes? Where do they get the money? The regional corporations are now being forced to take money that they would use otherwise to fix local roads, maintenance of roads and state traces, to put towards paying the expenditure for workers' salary. One regional corporation had to terminate all their security services at their market at a time when security is such a major issue throughout the country, and our markets are a hub for bringing local produce to our citizens. Recreation grounds and parks maintenance are also affected. So our regional corporations are clearly being forced to neglect the maintenance of infrastructure, and then the government will come and say, if you pay property tax, this will not happen. This is blackmail. The government is trying to blackmail the nation into accepting property tax by underfunding regional corporations. And the UNC says, no, we will not stand for it. And we will not agree to have workers in regional corporations lose their jobs because of the incompetence of this government. And we have the crippling of these institutions. Regional corporations play a crucial role in maintaining public services and ensuring the well-being of our citizens. Trinidad and Tobago is facing a dengue crisis, and the regional corporations are the only ones who have been stepping up in the face of the total failure of Terence Dialsing as Minister of Health and the clear lack of capacity of the Insect Vector Control Division. So while Terrible Terry is threatening to charge people $3,500, $3,500 is the fine for having premises in a dilapidated state, we are seeing more and more photos and videos on social media. Very recently, one showing a division of the insect vector control, big sign on the wall outside, and when you go inside, it is overrun with African snails. You have vehicles collecting water in the tray of the van. Clean water, dear Terry, clean water, breeding mosquitoes, Aedes aegypti. And I ask you to pay attention to that before you run to charge people $3,500. Our regional corporations have been making up for the lack of funding for mosquito spraying. Our government's negligence is really putting our citizens at risk. And we have citizens dying every day because of dengue and because the government refuses to acknowledge that there is a crisis. But I will tell you, in the regional corporations, they are not only facing the possibility of daily paid workers losing their jobs, but also several of the positions on the establishment, such as planning officers, road officers, the chief officers. There are regional corporations such as Kuva Tabakit that do not have a medical officer at a time when they are out there combating the dengue crisis created by this government. Planning officers, road officers, public health officers, building inspectors, clerical officers, vault attendants, workshop foremen. These are some of the positions on the establishment at regional corporations, and I have a compilation of the number on the establishment and the number of vacant. In terms of contract officers, positions that play a key role in bringing expert advice to the regional corporations. Your corporate secretary, who is your legal advisor to the council, the engineering and survey officer. Many corporations are without an engineer or a financial officer, as well as other key positions such as medical officer. So while the corporations are grappling to do the job, they are being left without resources, and we need our regional corporations to protect our communities from the threats which are really created by this government's negligence. At this time in our country, spraying for mosquito is not optional. It is a public health necessity. And the opposition raised this matter in Parliament when there were 3 dengue deaths. And the Minister of Health said that there is no dengue crisis. Today, Terence Singh is in the Trinidad Guardian saying that the number of confirmed cases has crossed 820. 820. And Terence Singh is now saying that Trinidad and Tobago is facing a dengue outbreak situation. It's a situation now. We in the opposition say that there is a dengue crisis in Trinidad and Tobago. People are losing their lives. And the 820 officially confirmed cases is nowhere close to the total number of persons who have contracted dengue, because we have seen numerous instances where people visit the hospitals and have been turned away without testing. We saw a little girl die because she was told to come back in 5 days for testing. We have a number of persons who do not have confidence in the public healthcare system, so they do not go to be tested, and they stay at home and treat themselves, and thankfully they survive. So it is clear that Terence Singh does not have a hold on this. And you know, he's saying, and I quote, "We are doing a lot at the government level and at the local government level, and we are encouraging people to do their part." I don't think people voted for Terence Singh for encouragement. We voted for you to perform. Performance beats old talk, and all this old talk does not stop people from contracting dengue and dying. The regional corporations are stepping up in your failure, in the wake of your failure. The government must immediately allocate the necessary funds to ensure that this vital service of mosquito eradication is carried out effectively. Our citizens are now being forced to take matters into their own hands to conduct spraying. A couple of weeks ago, the Insect Vector Division indicated that they had the capacity to spray for mosquitoes where persons contracted dengue and they are required to spray their homes. I can tell you that that is not happening. While I was on the field conducting flood assessments in St. Augustine, I met a very angry constituent. He and his entire family contracted dengue, and not a person from the Insect Vector Division, from the County Medical Office of Health or the Ministry of Health visited to spray his home or that of his neighbors. We also do not have the aerial spraying within the communities. So please, Terence Singh, stop mamagaing us. The Insect Vector Division does not have the capacity to treat with the current dengue crisis. And apart from that, citizens continue to live in fear, because they really see it as a necessity to go out and do their own spraying, and they are afraid of the dengue, the spread of dengue. So we have had several newspaper articles highlighting the fear of residents, and statistics that were quoted indicated that the Ministry of Health provides the epidemiological update on dengue cases throughout the country, and the ministry was confirming that there were 813 laboratory confirmed cases of dengue, and that was on August 13th. So while we're talking about dengue laboratory confirmed cases, the reality out there is very different. So we live on the reality side. The government seems to be burying its head in the sand or trying to fool people. I want to call on you, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to make a call to action. I want to call on you as we lay out today what is an indictment on the current administration's record. A record that is marked by failure after failure. A record that is causing people to lose their lives, to lose their jobs, children to drop out of school, and leave citizens to suffer the consequences. The skyrocketing food prices driven by the foreign exchange, the crisis that this government has utterly mismanaged. The continuous flooding that is devastating local agriculture as well as residents and driving up the cost of basic necessities. The evidence is very clear. The government has not only failed to protect the livelihoods of our citizens, but has really placed an unbearable burden on families trying to provide for their children's education amidst the rising prices throughout the country. We have seen our regional corporations, who are a backbone, being stripped of their ability to serve the people, being forced to decide whether to lay off persons or to cut other essential services. We in the opposition will continue to hold this administration accountable, and we will not stop until there is real change. There is no time for excuses, Trinidad and Tobago. If you want change, you must vote for change. We in the opposition will continue to stand with you. I now want to introduce my colleague, who will delve into some very interesting matters related to crime, as he is the shadow minister of crime in the government in waiting in the UNC. He is the member of parliament for Oropouche East. He is a deputy political leader of the United National Congress, the Honorable Roodal Moonilal.
Thank you very much, Sister Khadijah, Ameen, for a very comprehensive overview of the crisis facing Trinidad and Tobago in terms of local government, dengue, food prices, and the overall suffering of the people at this time. Indeed, when MP Ameen was speaking on the dengue issue, it reminded me of the heart-wrenching story of 8-year-old Delisa Narain from New Grant, 8-year-old, who died in circumstances suggesting negligence, incompetence, mismanagement of the health sector. I think she was fondly referred to as Dolly, 8-year-old child, died from dengue. She's one of several, including a 61-year-old supervisor in our own region of Penal Debe, who died, of course, from dengue. This is a government, as Sister Khadijah indicated, that cannot protect us from a mosquito, far less a bandit, a criminal element, natural disaster, rainfall. This is where we are now, given the gross incompetence and corruption and mismanagement of the resources of Trinidad and Tobago. We had 2 days ago 825 cases of dengue, and we have now 8 confirmed deaths in Trinidad and Tobago. And I remember very well the Minister of Health being angry and feeling offended when members of the opposition raised this matter several months ago in the parliament, when members of the opposition raised this matter of dengue, suggesting a crisis, an epidemic. The minister got up on his high horses and he was angry, he was vexed, he was offended. He says, don't use terms like that. Today, he's saying we have a situation. Well, the situation is that 8-year-old Dolly Mama died, a child. She died. She left us. That is the situation that Terence de Alsing faces. And these deaths that are so preventable fall on his hands, and he must carry that burden for the rest of his life. Members of the press, this morning, I want to raise a few matters, critical matters in the public domain, but to begin by really, again, stressing the nature of the disaster that we face by Rowley and his government. A couple days ago, you'll recall, there was a criminal activity in Port of Spain, downtown Port of Spain, and a bandit ran into a church where he then sought to disguise himself as a member of the clergy to escape police. That is where we reach now, where criminal enterprises and criminals are all, this is almost becoming something for Hollywood. When you open the newspaper, the top story is on a killing, and the story below is about a funeral. That is, as you go through newspapers now, it is burial, it is funeral, it is killing, it is murder, all over. We have 400 murders to this day. Maybe more by now, but 400. They recently appointed Keith Scotland as a minister in the ministry. I want to tell you something. Scotland has gone from the coal pot to the fire, and nothing will change. With great respect to him, nothing will change, because the only thing that has to change is Keith Rowley and this PNM administration. That is the only change that will bring some relief, that will bring some positive change to the crisis facing us in terms of crime and other matters as well. I recall, I had cause to recall, April 17th and 18th, 2023. I have it in my hand, a parliamentary response to a question, April 17th, 18th, 2023. Would you believe there was a two-day symposium at the Hyatt? The name of the symposium was Violence as a Public Health Issue. We asked how much money they spent. We got all the details here. They spent $3 million over 2 days to discuss crime. And when that is finished in 2024, we have had 400 murders to date. $3 million gone. You have had recently, I just touched on it in my introduction, this Jindal scandal that was exposed by the Honorable Kamla Prasad Bisesa. One of many that we have exposed. You know what the Prime Minister said? He said this country is in a bad state because the opposition is chasing away investors. Have you ever heard something so stupid? Something so crazy? A government saying they cannot get investors, cannot create jobs, cannot create business, cannot drive the economy because of the opposition. Well, then if that is the case, we should put the opposition in government. Because if we have this power to ward off investors, we have the power to attract investors as well. Rowley is saying that he cannot get investors in 8 years, 9 years. This country cannot get foreign direct investment because of the opposition. I've never heard this in any part of the planet. You ever hear the Democrats saying we cannot get investors in America at this time because of the Republicans, or vice versa? You ever hear in England the government say, the conservative government say, we don't have investment in the United Kingdom because of the Labour Party? This is what Keith Rowley is saying. We exposed the scandal with Sandals, remember? We exposed that. Jindal, it was a ploy, clearly, as the opposition leader said. Jindal was sourced not in India, but in Venezuela, to come here in some secret deal with the refinery. Remember that? This is the Prime Minister who rejected vaccines from India when the COVID outbreak came. Remember that? Fellas say you're begging for no vaccine. Because if you ask India, you're begging. He didn't want vaccine from India. Now we're taking basmati rice and cooking oil from India because he's concerned with that refinery and Jindal taking control of the refinery. Well, thankfully, to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, the UNC, working with our colleagues in the trade union movement, the OWTU, and others, were able to ward off that threat. And then Mr. Jindal did an amazing thing. He wrote a personal letter to the Prime Minister complaining that I would have come here and invested had it not been these opposition people making trouble. Could you imagine that? What type of relationship Mr. Jindal has with Keith Rowley that he writes a private and personal letter? If an investor is no longer interested in your country, I imagine they will turn their back and walk away. They may communicate to the relevant investment division, the relevant ministry and so on, that they are no longer interested. It's the first time I ever hear an investor write a private and confidential letter to the Prime Minister. That's his friend, that's his golfing partner, that's his drinking buddy. So these are the suspicious activities that we flagged, that we raised in the public space, and I believe we have saved this country. Another corruption scandal. Today, the PNM will assemble at Napa, I believe it is. Now, it's very instructive. Huh? The PNM has a special convention at Napa. Do you know when we came into government in 2010, the PNM was owing TTT, or at that time CNMG, They were owing over $350,000 for broadcasts that they did not pay for. The PNM has a track record of using state infrastructure, state installations, state facility, TV, radio, government houses. PTSC, they were owing PTSC for using bus for convention and meeting. Today, they are using Napa. They used SAPA before. I want to ask today if they are paying rental for Napa today for a special convention of the PNM. That's not the government, that's the party called PNM. They are running up a bill, and when they get out of office in a few months, whenever the election is called, we will go after them to pay rental and all related costs for all these activities that the PNM is hosting. They boast that they build Balize House. Why don't hold a meeting in Balize House? You boasting, you sell what they sell, fundraiser with car. They had a raffle and they built a $16 million building. That's what they told us. Why you don't hold a meeting in Balize House? Why you must go in Sapa and Napa? And they will not pay. And that is something I just flagged. But I'm coming now to the real issue there, which is this constitution reform matter. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, let me say and reiterate the position taken by the opposition leader and stated clearly in the last few days or so, that this matter of the constitutional reform, that entire matter is an election gimmick. It is the same tried and tested method of the PNM, is gimmickry as it was used before. Remember, they had local government. They had local government reform as the flag flying for the elections. They postponed local government elections. Thank God for the Privy Council. We had elections in the first place where they suffered losses in local government. But they were promoting local government reform as the key in 2023. Before that, they had the roadmap to recovery propaganda of election 2020. They are talking local government reform. Nothing happened in 9 years. The last time it had local government reform was under the People's Partnership with a form of proportional representation that gave electors the opportunity to have aldermen depending on the amount of votes a political party got. That's the last local government reform we had. In 9 years, nothing has happened. Now they talk constitutional reform. Expect nothing. Nothing will happen. This is a gimmickry that the PNM is using now for general elections. They cannot go to the people and say we created jobs. They cannot go to the people and say we provided infrastructure. They cannot go to the people and say we enhanced the quality of your life. They cannot go to the people and say they built schools. They cannot go to the people and say we have given you better health care. They cannot go to the people and say we have even fixed a pothole. So they go to the people with this nebulous, amorphous, vague type of document in their hand and say we'll give you constitutional reform. This election is about constitutional reform. I want to tell you this election from the PNM of constitutional reform is gimmick and it is a con job. It is a con job that they intend to undertake in the general elections that is soon before us. Remember, since 2015, they had about 37 probes and committees which have produced no benefit to the population, to the people, none. This reform report, constitution reform report, is a con job to be used as a PNM manifesto for the upcoming general election. Nothing will come out of it. You all saw it during the many sessions they had. The halls were empty. Not even the PNM supporters bothered to go to constitutional reform consultation. They couldn't muster a party group to attend. The chairman himself, Barindra Sinanan, said people were not attending. They had no interest in it at their consultations. Now they come up with a big report saying, do away with the Privy Council, do away with what? They must be crazy. They must be mad. They go on crazy. They come up to talk about 2 terms for leader, prime minister, and so on. They come up to talk about these issues to make it an election issue. I call upon the population, be wary. This constitutional reform gimmickry is a ploy to use as a PNM manifesto to attempt to fool the people because they have not delivered goods and services. Can they come to you and say, you are safer today than you were in 2015? Can they come to you, the people, and say, we have been dealing with crime and murders. You are now safe in your home, in your community, in your village. They can't. So they come with this document, Constitution Reform. That's our manifesto. Because they have failed to deliver. They have failed to deliver in every sector of the national economy. They have crashed the economy. The economy bust. When we go back there, we have to take a torchlight. When we go in the treasury, we might find cobweb. There might be nothing in the treasury when they are finished. They are blaming poverty and poor people for crime, as if this country never had poor people and poverty before. They're blaming them for crime now, while they have failed on every front to deal with this issue of crime. Right now, we can show you, we have the pictures at the San Fernando Yacht Club. Do you know there are Coast Guard boats parked up there? Small boats that can be used, I believe, in the riverine unit and in other service for the country, parked up at the San Fernando Yacht Club for months, and they cannot be repaired to do basic patrols. They talk about border control, border protection. They understand it. They tell us drugs and illegal weapons coming in the country. What have they done? All the vessels purchased by the partnership, the Chinese vessels, the Daman vessels, they park up at Stobbles Bay. They park up Shagaramas, doing nothing. They are in need of repair. They are in need of manpower. They are in need of urgent, refurbishment. For months and years, Coast Guard vessels are in a state where they cannot function. They are not operational. And indeed, we must call on the Coast Guard now to give us a report on their assets. And you will find out that 90% of the assets of the Coast Guard are today non-operational due to the need for repairs, upgrading, refurbishment. Under this administration, under Rowley, Hines, and Stuart Young, that is the state I showed you. This is just one example. Is it San Fernando at the Yacht Club now, park up there. But while they are doing that, ladies and gentlemen, they're pushing constitutional reform so that they can try with this gimmickry to fool the population in the coming days. So you will say, we don't have food on our table, home invasion, murder, kidnapping, dengue, but we get constitution reform. That's what they're doing. They will fool no one with that so long as the UNC is alive. I want to go to another critical issue here, and I have several issues to cover in my time here. Within recent time, we have seen a story in the newspaper. I just want to raise this in a few minutes, where they are now boasting that Sealot's Basin restored after 15 years. A story in 2024, August 17th, is in the newspaper, Trinidad Express, this story. They restored the basin, they cleaned the channel, restoration by National Energy on behalf of NP and Ministry of Energy. Understand that, Ministry of Energy. We come into that, Ministry of Energy. During the period December 2023 to July 2024, they went and they ensured that particular dredging was done and so on. And I have a picture you can see as well. We can bring up the picture there, Kevin, on the screen. And this picture tells us where a particular facility is on the Beetham and where they were doing all their cleaning and dredging and restoration work. It's right here. We'll have it. What is remarkable about this is that not that they went and dredged under the Ministry of Energy. They went and dredged anything and restored anything, so that they are boasting that 15 years now, they have been doing work that could not be done in 15 years. You know what's amazing? There's another related story where in 2021, Massey Holdings Limited were involved in a sale of its concrete plant, Massey Presticon, to a Tobago businessman and contractor, Alan Warner, for $30 million. So Massey is selling their concrete plant for $30 million to a Tobago businessman by the name of Alan Warner, who is an admitted, confessed friend for 50 years of the Prime Minister. Mr. Warner, in an article in August 4, 2024 in the newspaper, made an interesting point. He spoke about his life in business and so on. And he said he recalled that he established a concrete and asphalt plant in Sealots and the Beetham, where he was going to
increase production in quarrying materials and so on, and generate income and generate jobs and so on, Mr. Warner purchased an asphalt plant, concrete plant, quarrying facilities in Beetham. How convenient it is that he purchased this from Massey, operating an asphalt plant in Beetham, and at the same time the Ministry of Energy had a bright idea to do restoration work to dredge and clean that entire area. Did they do that for NP? Did they do that for Massey? Or did they do that for a friend of the Prime Minister? Someone that the Prime Minister is on record, public record, it is in the public space, was asking a former Commissioner of Police to fast-track application for gun license and dealership license and so on for colleagues in Tobago. So you all understand? Connect the dots. When they were cleaning and dredging the Beetham and sea lots, it wasn't for any state enterprise. It was for, we believe it was for a private businessman, a friend of the Prime Minister. They can deny that how much they want. But that is what we believe to have occurred there in that situation. Ladies and gentlemen, I go to our next issue that I want to address this morning. Now, there are people in the national community and so on. You hear, what is the opposition doing? What is the opposition saying? The opposition is not doing this. The opposition is not doing that. And some people have the unmitigated gall to suggest that is a weak opposition and so on. Let me remind people, and members of the national community, just a few matters. It is the opposition that exposed for all to see the matter of the scandal involving the purchase and the sending back of helicopters years ago. It is the opposition that exposed the alleged gun possession of firearms, high-powered firearms, by children of a government minister. It is the opposition that exposed the government on the Mosquito Creek, the Mosquito Crack scandal. It is the opposition that exposed this government on Tresh Trail housing development, where an entire set of housing units had to be abandoned because of poor infrastructure work and faulty design, engineering and architectural designs and so on. It is the opposition that exposed this government on the construction of the Ministry of Health headquarter building. It is the opposition that brought to the parliament the matter of Shanghai terminating the contract at the Central Block, Port of Spain. It is the opposition that went to the parliament to tell the population and expose the government on the OAS-NIDCO arbitration. It is the opposition that exposed this government on the corruption on the secondary roads rehabilitation company that led to the close down of that company. Today it is the opposition that raised this matter of a deal where HDC, now HDC has gone back to its scandalous days of 2010 and before. They have gone back to the Calder Heart Udicott HDC days of 2010 and before we came into office in May 2010. It was August 5th, this year, recently, that myself, as Shadow Minister of Housing, raised this issue, brothers and sisters, of the HDC on the verge of giving a contract, selecting as a preferred bidder a company by the name of China Harbor Engineering Corporation out of China. We raised this issue on a press release on August 5th, 2024, where they were giving out a contract for $475 million, the HDC. I call that scandalous, contempt, offensive. First, that Trinidad and Tobago has excess capacity, idle capacity for construction of homes, contractors, plant and equipment, machinery, manpower, skill. Why do you need a foreign company to build houses? Why? When you have excess capacity here and you have idle equipment by locals. They went and got into some type of sweetheart deal. When this matter was raised by the opposition, the HDC, I want to remind you, I had a day, August 6th it was, I will never forget that day so long as I live, and maybe after, I will not forget it either. On that day, the HDC put out, and I have it in my hand here, not one, 3 media releases to counter my statement. They issue media releases
as you will have your meals 3 times a day. They had 3 media releases 3 times a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It got so bad on that day that I needed 2 Panadol because the media kept calling me, and every time I make a comment, HDC changed their release. So I said in the end, I will make no comment until I see their final release, which may never come. So I asked the HDC in my statement, I say, why did you not put the second release first or put the third release second? Why have me all evening commenting and you changing the release? 3 releases from the HDC. All wrong. But they attacked, of course, the former Minister of Housing. That was the only thing that stayed consistent in the 3 releases is they said they were taken aback by the former Minister of Housing, making statements that this process was improper, and they took note of it, and they, of course, they condemned the former. HDC is surprised by the former line minister's statement that the tender process was questionable and it was lacking in integrity and lacking in terms of its credibility. They were attacking me. I live a few days after. God is great. To see a headline in the newspaper, Saturday, Express, I think you have it on your screen now, scrapped. Now, when I saw that, I thought it was a refinery. But it was the HDC, the day before, meaning Friday, issued a statement to the press scrapping the arrangement with China Harbor only after the Office of Procurement Regulation issued not 1 but 2 releases. I have them in my hand as well. They issued 2 releases I have in my hand, and you have it on your screen. It will come up, I'm sure. The releases indicated that 2 contractors, pursuant to the laws in this country, what they did is called challenge proceedings, meaning 2 contractors, I believe is NH International and Wood Green Construction, went to the Office of Procurement Regulation and filed challenge proceedings. Only when they had challenge proceedings, the HDC then jump up and say, okay, we cancel, we lock off that, we ain't doing that again. Why did you do it? If you issued 3 press releases to say that everything was above board, integrity, credibility, and the former line minister didn't know what he's talking about, why did you scrap the project? Why did you not stand your ground, as we say in the UNC? Why did you not stay and hold your ground and say, listen, everything was done above board? But I will tell you what is happening here. And this matter cannot end. The HDC must explain why they canceled the project with China Harbor in hours after Wood Green Construction and NH International filed the challenge proceedings. Why? What do you have to hide? Because when they investigate that, you will have to explain. There is something called an evaluation committee. Let's use a big word, but really it is 3 people called the independent. It is called the Independent Evaluation Committee. I get it right here for you. Independent Evaluation Committee, comprising financial expert, procurement expert, technical expert. They decided China Harbor, by the way, these 3 people. We want to know today, who are the members of the Independent Evaluation Committee that selected China Harbor at the Ministry of Housing and HDC? Who are they? Because China Harbor came in with a bid which, according to experts in the field, persons have said to us in the UNC, from the housing sector, they could not have been, the China Harbor could not have been sending in a realistic bid given the guidelines of tongue and country, given the guidelines of what is called the request for proposal, RFP. So the RFP had to be aligned with what you are tendering. They said that China Harbor could never have been building those amount of units at that cost consistent with the RFP and consistent with tongue and country guidelines and guidelines from other statutory authorities and entities. It was impossible for China Harbor to be building that. It would have been the equivalent of what is called a concrete jungle, high-rise buildings and so on, which is not in the RFP. So how were they selected? Why were they selected? Is a friend of the Prime Minister involved in this as well? Because this entire government is run by Rowley and Friends. This is not the PNM here. This is Rowley and Friends. in charge. The whole government is run from the golf course. Is a friend involved in that? Why did you select China Harbor? Don't say you cancel it, just so tell us why. And let me ask the next question. When you decided China Harbor could not do the job for one reason and you scrapped that, why did you not give the second bidder? It's called Wood Green Construction. If you say the first bidder is unrealistic, to use a simple term, but it's more complex than that. If you say the first bidder proposal cannot fly, that's unrealistic, that cannot work. There's a second bidder, a third bidder, a fourth bidder. Why did you not go with the second bidder? Why you cancel? Why are you going to retender? Is it because China Harbor and the interest behind China Harbor can now reincarnate themselves into a next entity to go for the same contract? Why? This is the burning question. The corruption here runs deep. If China Harbor is scrapped, there's a second bidder, there's a third, there's a fourth. Because as the president of the construction sector said today, I think in the papers, when you have these bids, brothers and sisters, you know what happens? Construction companies, they spend enormous money. Let me tell you something, that is not changing the gate in front of your house, you know. That is not painting the wall, you know. That is technical work. It costs millions of dollars to do technical submissions. It costs millions. It's not just the package for $3,000-4,000 you pay for. You pay enormous costs for the technical engineering people, design people, to do work, to bring in your bid. And all of that scrap now because you didn't get through with China Harbor because the opposition raised the matter, the media raised the matter. No. It cannot stop here. HDC and the Ministry of Housing must account. And today I tell WPC Camille Robinson Regis, I want to tell the WPC that she must let go search warrant and now go and look for award at HDC to see what they were doing and how they arrived at that matter. Brothers and sisters, a related matter I will raise too. I finished with the Santa Rosa matter there. There's another matter involving HDC. Shagwanas, right behind my back here where I'm speaking. Shagwanas, there is something called the Edinburgh Towers. Brothers and sisters, now this HDC is blight and corrupt. But they blight too, but they corrupt as well. This is the same HDC that had to cancel a project in 2019 with another Chinese company that they gave a contract to build 500 units, I believe, in Port of Spain, South Cay, and Lady Hills in San Fernando. You remember that? I forgot the name of the company. I'll get it in a little while. But the company was given a contract to build housing under Newman George. That is the man HDC had at the time. It was a Chinese company by the name of China Gezhuba Group International Engineering. That was cancelled as well. So in 2019, you cancel a contract for 500 million. 2024, another contract for 472 million. And the Edinburgh Towers behind me, I have a picture, and I think we have some pictures on your screen to come up. This is a blight, a project that is a blight. It was started by one Keith Rowley as Minister of Housing. It started at a cost of 57 million. You know what it costs today? About $180 million. When we were there, we put a halt on this contract because the compound, the building, the facility at Edinburgh were in violation of health and safety laws. It was in violation of town and country planning laws. It was in violation of WASA and TNTEC regulations. The staircase was badly positioned. They had no elevator shaft and so on properly done. We stop it. Do you know today there is a mad rush to complete those towers in Edinburgh, Shagwanas, I believe in the constituency of Shagwanas East, if I'm not mistaken, Carney Central. They are now in a mad rush to finish that, and they have been issuing $3 million contracts to friends and family of officials of the HDC. Friends and family are receiving $3 million contracts per floor. So when you add up the floors and the 3 million, you'll see what we're talking about. Friends and family without any procurement process. Today I asked the HDC, give us a list of the names of all contractors at that site in Edinburgh. Give us the list of the scope of works of all contractors. When did work begin? When is work expected to end? When is that facility, housing estate, expected to be completed? At what cost? But more importantly, what is the procurement process that was used to give out contracts like nuts at that building? And I put it to you, members of the press, that is another scandal that will now be unraveled in the coming days by the opposition as well, in addition to the other matters. So I leave that there for now, and I ask the HDC, and I ask the interesting Mr. Newman George, I believe he is now in charge of the construction company, or one of the companies under the HDC. I asked him to give us some answers on the Edinburgh Towers, and whether or not he's aware of the contractors who are there. That is a critical matter that we will leave there. There are two matters in the press today I'll just like to briefly deal with before I close. And one matter, Matura wetlands under threat. It is in the Newsday of today. This matter here. There is a shocking revelation in the newspaper today that 72 acres of land in close vicinity to protected areas and areas where we are world famous for the turtle nestling and so on. In that area, in Matura, quarrying is taking place on 72 acres of land at this time, where the amount of land, to use a local example for you, is the equivalent of almost 20 football fields that they are quarrying, removing materials from. We are told they have no EMA clearance. They have no permission. We would like to ask, who gave permission? Who gave authority? What authority has this company called Trillions Systems Limited? Their directors are from San Fernando. There is no record of this company involved in anything. This company, we believe, was formed in 2022. That's a year and a half ago, something like that. And today, they are quarrying 72 acres of land in a protected area, in vicinity of a protected area. They're excavating materials, operating a quarry. The EMA says they have no record of this, but clearly somebody has a record of this. Who are these people? We have the company documents. We know their names, but their names are not known. Because they are persons, we believe, not in business of this kind before. Not in quarrying, not in construction. Are they also fronting for someone else in this matter? Persons from San Fernando. Who are they operating a business? Who is the quarry owner? This company, Trillion Systems Limited, registered, I believe, in 2022 on lands that are protected. And I speak on this matter as a former minister in charge of the environment. These are sites near the nesting site of the leatherback turtles. It is in a protected zone, and they're being allowed to endanger the environment. Apart from the fact that the EMA has no record of them, how did they reach there? Who reached there? Who authority is this? I raise that matter. These questions, we leave this matter to the Ministry of Energy, and the Gary Sobers minister could tell us more about that. Another matter today in the newspaper, autopsies costing millions, the Express newspaper. Today, just today, look at this. This was after, let me move. This was after this government promised years ago in the budget, Fitzgerald Hines, to hire more pathologists, more technical and scientific officers at the Forensic Science Center to ensure that this doesn't happen. Bodies pile up and strain that particular installation, that particular state entity. They promised that. I have the notes and records here. But rising murder in the last 8 months put strain on state and pathologists and so on. The story is in the newspaper. Over 5 million in autopsies in 8 months. Postmortems costing government up to $20,000 each. This is the story. And brothers and sisters of the press, I just want to remind you, in case, of course, you forgot, and you may not have had sight of documents before. It was the government of Trinidad and Tobago, under Rowley's government, so to speak, that made promises. 6 years ago, in July 2019, Minister Stuart Young boasted that the government would be recruiting additional pathologists. He was boasting that in 2019. Where are they today? Minister Hines revealed during the budget debates in 2022 and 2023 that we only had 2 pathologists operating at the Science Center, and promised in the Standing Finance Committee, we have the Hansard and so on, that they will be hiring more, recruiting more. They'll be hiring more, recruiting more. We have the Hansard accounts of that, and we can get that easily as a matter of public record. Minister Young shamelessly boasted in the 2018-2019 budget of a new state-of-the-art DNA and Forensic Science Center to be completed in 2019. Where's that science center? Where's that state-of-the-art science center? It's in the illegal quarry in Mathura. The opposition has been calling for a better incentive package for forensic pathologists as far back as 2018. Today, nothing has happened. And I say this to tell you, when we were in office, brothers and sisters of the press, when we were in the office, we were very proud of the achievements in this particular area. Under our People's Partnership Administration, we had the extension and modification of the Forensic Science Center. We had the computerization of the Forensic Science Center. We increased the staff complement of the Forensic Science Center. 6 additional contract positions were created and filled, including several of the technical and scientific officers. We launched a master's degree training program in forensics to begin at the new South Hospital that we built, the Faculty of Medical Sciences, UWI, a master's degree in forensic science. That is what we did, establish those projects and programs. Today, we have to see in the newspaper autopsies costing millions as bodies pile up, and shamelessly the government says nothing about that. Instead, they're concerned with quarrying in Mathura. And I ask that question again, are they doing that as a front for others? We are informed that the company, Trillions Company, is really a cryptocurrency company from San Fernando. Now, how does a cryptocurrency business reach to 72 acres of land in Mathura and they are, quarrying there? How that working? I pray to God that this doesn't involve pyramid scheme as well. Huh? You remember you had something called a pyramid scheme? I hope these companies themselves are not into pyramid scheme and somehow find another quarrying venture up in the east. So those issues were in the newspaper today, and I thought I would just raise that issue with you. And don't want to keep extremely long, but to say that there are pressing and burning issues affecting national security. The new Minister of National Security will help not, will bring absolutely no change, no amelioration of the situation. We're in a crisis, ladies and gentlemen, in the fire service. In particular, I don't know if some of you would have seen a press release by the Fire Service Association of Trinidad and Tobago, dated 12 August 2024. Now, this is very instructive. Very instructive. Press release, update on vehicle availability in the fire service. This is it here, in my hand. This says that we are now compelled, meaning the association, to inform you that the situation has worsened in the fire service, with only 3 out of 11 stations currently operational in the Northern Division. This alarming development is a direct result of ongoing equipment shortages and the deployment of non-compliant vehicles to our police station, to our fire stations. During a routine daily check a couple days ago, it was discovered that several vehicles within the division, Northern, including those recently deployed to stations without appliances, did not have valid inspection stickers from the licensing authority. Look at the crisis now. Fire brigade don't have licensing stickers and inspections. You know what that means? That means that these appliances, as they are called, themselves are not roadworthy. They are carrying fire officers going to save the lives of persons.
They are carrying fire officers, public officers. They are going presumably to save the lives and property of citizens, and they are not road worthy. So while they are chasing, going down the road now to out a fire, they shut down. A tire blow off. The brakes give away. That is the situation in the fire service under Fitzgerald Hines. Brothers and sisters, and the fire services have spoken about that. There's a related matter I'll raise, but I will not, for obvious reason, go in details. I have in my hand a document addressed to one Natasha Barrow, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security, dated January 24th, 2024. This is a letter, brothers and sisters of the press, from the Chief Fire Officer acting, Andy Hutchinson. And this letter details, to my knowledge here, corrupt practices in the fire services. Corrupt practices involving contracting for goods and services in matters and in circumstances that suggest fraud, that suggest corruption. I will not speak in detail on this. But the Chief Fire Officer acting, pointing out to the Ministry of National Security obstructive practices, practices that involve procurement activities being undermined, hiding critical documents. Would you believe there's an allegation here that a report on the famous ladder, you remember it had a crisis in the fire services where they pay a certain amount, how much money for ladders? Millions of dollars for ladders that could not be used. They are saying now that the ladder file number 120550 at the procurement unit was removed and has disappeared. So the ladder disappeared and the file disappeared of the ladder. This is the fire services today. Apart from that, I have in my hand serious documentation from Fire Service Procurement Division to the Chief Fire Officer that speaks of dilapidated fleet, procurement documents that are false, overcharging to the fire services and so on, and of course, real information and evidence here. These are matters that have been sent already to the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of National Security. So I don't have to send it to her, Mrs. Barrow, Miss Barrow, I believe, Natasha Barrow. I don't have to send it to her. It has been sent. Today I want to ask the Permanent Secretary and the Ministry, what have you done with these matters? Have you sent it to the police? Have you investigated it internally? What is the outcome of your findings, of your investigation into corrupt practices in the fire services? These are matters that come to the fore, and I leave it there for now because I will not be calling companies' name and people's name at this time. I just raise that matter and I flag it in terms of the fire services. The other matter, of course, we will talk about very briefly is the matter of infrastructure. I can tell you from my own experiences in my own constituency, school is about to open. Brothers and sisters, school is about to open in a few weeks. There are 2 bridges in the Barakpur or Puchis area, what is called scale number 2 in Barakpur and Lower Monkey Town. They have these bridges collapse. They put Bailey Bridge that creates enormous traffic. They have started construction and they have stopped and slowed down construction. School is about to be open. That will lead to enormous traffic. Apart from that, we have flooding now in those areas because of the construction site. Flooding in Lower Barakpur and in Rochad Douglas Road, it's called there. Flooding in those areas because of the mismanagement at the Ministry of Works that has allowed that. While I'm on that issue, anyone has asked so far at the mosquito crack at that area in the vicinity of the cremation site in South Trinidad, where we were the first to expose, brothers and sisters. We were the first to expose that. What has happened to that? They have not fixed it. It is still the mosquito crack. The contractor has not been called to book. We believe it will cost another $80 million of taxpayers' money to do rehabilitation work there. Nothing has started and nothing has finished. And today they're boasting about construction. There's a joint select committee now, a PNM committee, interviewing PNM people to come up with a PNM report on the construction of the highway and all their job is to bad talk the People's Administration, People's Partnership Administration. That's their job. Every 2-3 weeks they meet, and they meet in the Port of Spain Joint Select Committee, PNM talking to PNM and writing PNM. And they talk about the highway to Point 14, what happened under Kamla Prasad Bisesa, what happened under Moonilal, Rambachan and whoever. And while they're talking about that, the mosquito crack's still there. While they're using the crack on the face, they ignore the mosquito crack. That is the crisis we face. They cannot fix that in years, and we were the first to expose that. And I'm now reliably informed, because we are keep pressing on this matter of Matura wetlands under threat, where a company named Trillions System is involved. And then the name come to the fore now, one Karen Rose, I believe. I don't know the person. I don't know Karen Rose from 5 Roses, from any other Rose. I don't know the person. All I can say is the person is a director of Trillions. Is this person, I'm asking a question, is this person part of the Heliconia Foundation of the PNM? I mean, in this day and age, I'm sure we could go onto the social media, and we can go onto the online pages and find any connection. But I'm wondering, because someone is suggesting that Mr. Karen Rose is part of the Heliconia Foundation. I don't know. I don't know. It may be so, it may not be so. I don't make that statement in a blanket way or in a conclusive way. But it's a question that has been raised, and it has been raised from someone, so we raise the question as well. It is only a question at this stage, but we will know in due course. We will know. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I wanted to indicate in closing that the general election is upon us. We must be mindful of where we are. In 9 years, the government has done nothing. They have produced nothing. The economy has collapsed. It is now bust. The health sector has collapsed. They cannot protect you from a mosquito. They have created no new jobs, no new industry. They have failed to attract foreign direct investment to this country. The security and crime situation is completely out of control. They have no answer to that one in terms of crime and insecurity. They have failed in the education sector. We have the lowest pass rates now ever. They have failed in every conceivable area of national life. Infrastructure, the infrastructure of this country is now completely dilapidated, completely. This place is unrecognizable from what it was in 2015. Today, as I speak in a few hours, they will come with their gimmickry, with their gimmicks on constitutional reform. They will come to tell you that this is reform, but this is for the election. We want to change the way things are done in the country. The Prime Minister saying it have too much interference in the appointment of a police commissioner, while he went to the President's house and snatched a letter from somebody's hand that led to the refusal of the President and the inability to appoint a commissioner of police. Imagine he talking about too much interference political in appointing a commissioner of police, while he snatched a letter that led to the failure to appoint a commissioner of police. They have undermined the Police Service Commission. They have undermined the Public Service Commission. They have undermined the judiciary. They have undermined the DPP. They have undermined every single independent institution in this country. And now in the highest manner of, let me use this in boldfacity, they're talking about constitutional reform. This, members of the press, is gimmick. Is gimmick. Expect nothing. Nothing will change. Just as nothing changed with local government reform, nothing will change with constitutional reform. In fact, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa told Mr. Sinanan earlier o'clock that he ought not to be on that committee as chairman, since he had pronounced on this matter of the Privy Council in his private capacity, and he ought not to be chairman. He refused, no problem, he continued. Today the report say what? Privy Council must go. That is Mr. Sinanan talking. That is not no report. That's the PNM talking, because the PNM want to remove the Privy Council, because it is the Privy Council that stands against them on critical matters in national life. It is the Privy Council. So expect nothing from constitutional reform, as we got nothing from local government reform, as we got nothing from the 37 probes and committees that they investigate everything on the face of the earth. This issue of constitutional reform is a distraction to take your attention away as a population from the critical issues that affect you. The issue of flooding, Khadijah spoke about it. Flooding, when it drizzle. Long time we used to say when it rain, it flood. Then we say when it drizzle, it flood. You know now people are saying when rain set up, it start to flood. When rain set up, it start to flood. That is how they are managing this country. And we ask you to be cognizant, to be wary of this, and to ensure that you are not fooled by this PNM gimmickry today of constitution reform. So I will leave it there, and I believe that maybe we'll have some questions that we can engage in some of these issues or any other issue that you believe related. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the issue of body cams, the recent spate of police-involved killings and the refusal to wear body cams. How does the UNC respond to that particular issue? It's a very, very serious issue.
Well, it's a deep issue first, because while the police service bought body cams, it was either intentionally or not. The body cams were bought, but the batteries couldn't support a long-term use of the body cams. So the police complained that the batteries run down quickly because they were not the right batteries. So that's one problem. Secondly, the storage of the materials that they keep on the camera, there are problems now with the storage of that material at police stations and so on, we are told. So this is a matter that requires, I believe, serious intervention from the Ministry of National Security to ensure that they have ample body cams, that they have the proper batteries and supporting equipment for that, and that the materials could be stored. Because what is the sense you have a body camera, there's an incident last night, but you don't store the footage? That is a critical point, and I think what we will have to do is to bring better management, not laws necessarily, better management to the TTPS and the Ministry of National Security to ensure that that is as effective as it can be, and it is in other countries.
Those are unique cameras, where in other countries all the information are stored where they are being used,
Yeah.
but it cannot be stored in Trinidad.
They're saying that the computerized network systems that is required to store it is not, we don't have the quality of equipment, and we don't have the personnel in some cases. Any other?
There's another issue with Caribbean Airlines flying to various destinations. In recent vintage, they have decided to fly to the British Virgin Islands, which is a very known drug shipment point. Caribbean Airlines in the past, there have been, over the years, there have been instances where drugs were found in the airlines at various airports in North America and so on. Are you aware of, or is the opposition aware of any survey might have been done to dictate a decision to fly to BVI? Why? Because how many people actually fly to the BVI to and fro from Trinidad?
Well,
in terms of a feasibility study.
Let's say Caribbean Airlines require a deep investigation and review of their operations, their financial position, and their decisions over the last 9 years or so. That is an entity that has been almost rogue. They are forever flying new routes and then terminating new routes. As you will recall, they were flying to Curacao, they were flying to Panama, they were flying to Dominican Republic, they were flying to Puerto Rico, they were flying to everywhere. And as soon as they start, they will stop at some time. Because we believe that they have not done proper assessments and feasibility and so on, and marketing studies on those destinations. We are here now, as you say, new destinations where we are not sure of the load, passenger loads, and what will be possible. Now, you can only hope that they predicate that on marketing studies, on actual scientific work, survey work, and so on. But they haven't been known to start and stop. The other troubling thing with Caribbean Airlines, like Heritage as well, is that every 3 months, 6 months, you hear Caribbean Airlines make a profit. They're operating with a profit. And then 2 years later, here we write off a debt of $2 billion. We write off a debt of 500 million. We write off a debt of, 700 million. But they are declaring profits while they carry huge debts, and the minister then write off the debt. So that is something very troubling with Caribbean Airlines. It is not specifically a matter that I speak too much on, but it's a matter that an incoming government would have to look at by way of review of their operations. And I'm sure a new board appointed by the UNC would review their operations, their marketing strategies, their expenditure as well. Their expenditure over the 9 years to see, did we get value for money on that matter? And while they are doing that, they can't seem to put enough flights to Tobago. It's almost impossible to get a flight to Tobago while you are looking at sending jets to destinations where you may not even have passengers. You cannot use some of your existing capacity to help the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to fly between both islands.
But do you think there could be other motives and other than lack of feasibility studies and all that? Do you think that there could be other motives? And I want to join the point in terms of, it's a question, I'm not making any argument.
Sure.
It's a question in terms of drug shipment, because if you look at the American, the DEA sites and so on, BVI is known. In fact, only last week, a former BVI prime minister was sentenced to 11 years jail in state for drug trafficking and so on.
Yes.
I forgot the name, I think Andrew Fahy or something. So Fahy doesn't say.
But I won't be in a position to speak to individuals that way. But what I can say is that Caribbean Airlines should be the subject of a review in terms of its marketing strategy, its expenditure, and its financial bookkeeping. Could I also indicate that I made the point just to re-emphasize the point that we have to keep an eye on the Rowley government, since, as you know, the matter with the Jindal interest in the refinery, the matter with China Harbour. China Harbour is accused of bribery, of paying kickbacks banned by the World Bank. And you can see the pattern, China Harbour, the Jindal scandal, where the government is attracting companies and individuals in some cases with suspicious backgrounds. And this is a pattern that we must keep on. Could I invite Sister Khadijah Ameen to get to the podium in the event that you also have some questions for?
Yes, I do have a question for MP Ameen.
Yes.
You had mentioned that the UNC has been urging the government to take dengue more seriously, and they have instead been trying to cover up the seriousness. Do you see parallels with COVID? And what is your view that they refuse to declare dengue a public health emergency, but insist on calling crime a public health emergency?
Thank you very much for that question. You would recall that it was the opposition who raised the issue of COVID in Parliament very early. And Minister Terence Dialsingh told people, instead of wearing a mask, as the Honorable Kamala Prasad Bisesa advised, that they should tie a t-shirt around their nose. He was very dismissive, and the government as a whole refused to take COVID seriously. You remember we went into the carnival period, and they insisted it was okay to keep the borders open. And when the COVID numbers started to rise and people started to die, that is when they were rushing and bungling and tripping up themselves to take precautions that the opposition recommended that were in line with international standards and World Health Organization recommendations. It is very similar to what we are seeing with the dengue situation, where the UNC in Parliament called on the government to address the dengue situation as we did with COVID. And the government reaction was very similar. The Minister of Health was dismissive. He tried to tell the population that the UNC was creating panic in the public domain, that there were only 3 cases or only 3 deaths, and he was very dismissive. The UNC continues to raise these as matters of public importance. And it is only when people die, when cases skyrocket and things get out of hand, we are now seeing Terence Dialsingh reacting. And it is interesting that the government refuses to declare the dengue situation as a public health emergency. But they continue to insist for months now that crime is a public health emergency. I have no doubt, and we in the opposition said that crime is probably the biggest issue threatening our country because people are dying every day. We see murders, multiple murders every day. But certainly there is a dengue crisis in this country. And when you speak about public health emergency, I think we have long past this time for dengue to be addressed and be labeled a public health emergency and to get the type of resources that it needs. Yeah?
Thank you. For Dr. Moonilal, you had mentioned the corruption charges against the Chinese company bidding for the HDC Santa Rosa project. Is this a parallel to the Jindal matter? And do you see a pattern in this PNM government's awarding of contracts?
Well, as I said before, we need to keep our eyes on the PNM in their last few days in office. They're in their last few days of office, so we need to keep an eye on them because at this time they will enter into all type of suspicious and strange deals with very dubious entities and individuals. This is a pattern, whether it's the China Harbor, whether it is the Naveen Jindal, whether it's another character, and so on. They will enter into suspicious deals that carry enormous costings, billions of dollars in some cases. We need to watch them in the energy sector as well, because they enter into these deals with suspicious institutions and personalities, and there may be more in the mortar than the pestle. I say no more.
There's a situation in Venezuela post the elections there. How concerned is the United National Congress as a government waiting as to what's taking place in Venezuela as well as Trinidad and Tobago's current government's relationship with the administration in the Maduro administration in Venezuela?
We have already expressed our policy position on that over the years. Our position is not new. We support democracy in Venezuela. We support fair and free elections in Venezuela. We support fair and free elections in Trinidad and Tobago. And I just want to remind you that the political leader has called for international observers in Trinidad and Tobago for general elections. And that is a call we must re-emphasize. In light of Venezuela and the relationship between Maduro and Raul, we need to ensure that we have international observers for the general elections in Trinidad and Tobago, whenever they may be called. This month, next month, December, next year, we need international observers. On the Venezuela matter, we're very clear. We support democracy, fair and free elections. The turmoil in Venezuela has a way of infiltrating Trinidad and Tobago, and that's something we keep a lookout on. Something to add? I'll ask Sister Khadijah to make some wind-up statements. And in conclusion, some concluding remarks.
So, members of the media who have joined us, we in the United National Congress continues to bring you the facts, FACTS. We continue to reveal the truth about this catastrophic government, about how millions and billions of taxpayers' dollars are going to friends, family, and financiers while citizens suffer. While mysterious companies get questionable contracts, small companies cannot get foreign exchange to make purchases. Food prices are skyrocketing, while self-declared friends of the Prime Minister are involved in million-dollar questionable deals. Parents cannot afford textbooks and school supplies in this country. While billions jumping up, regional corporations are not getting money to pay wages and colas of permanent workers, and hundreds of workers could face the breadline. Citizens are suffering on a daily basis because crime is spiraling out of control. You have murders every day, multiple murders, rapes, home invasions, robberies, extortion. You have food prices skyrocketing, fuel prices and the cost of living generally going through the roof. School children are being forced to become dropouts, and this leads to a lifetime of suffering because without an education, It means that they cannot find sustainable jobs and make a meaningful living. And parents are being forced to choose between sending their children to school or buying meals to put on their table. So let us be very clear. We in the opposition will continue to demand accountability and justice and call for action. We will continue to expose the truth. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago deserve better. We deserve better than a government who prioritizes their need over our needs, who protect their own livelihoods and that of their friends and family, but rather who invest in the future of our nation. This government has conducted one catastrophe after another. The time for excuses and empty promises is over. We in Trinidad and Tobago, every citizen must demand that the government act now to address these critical issues. And all that we have outlined today must be investigated, and the people of Trinidad and Tobago must get an answer. The people of Trinidad and Tobago must no longer accept what is being dealt to us by this government. We have to stand up and make a choice. We have to stand up and be firm. And I warn you that those who speak out against the government in any dictatorship are vilified, they are called unpatriotic, and in Trinidad and Tobago, they are called UNC. So I warn you, when more and more people begin to speak out against this rowdy government, if you see them being targeted, know that that is a sign of dictatorship, and we must vote against it and vote them out soon. I thank you very much for joining us as we in the UNC continue with our pre-budget consultations throughout the country. Tomorrow, we are here at the UNC headquarters with the Shogunas West constituency. And look out on our UNC Facebook page and social media for coverage of our pre-budget consultations, where you, the people, have a say, and you can get to come and voice your opinion on what should become government policy. We thank you very much for joining us this morning.